It's MTK on the MIC. 20 years ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger managed to leverage a recall election in California to get him into the governor's mansion. And there was just 9 weeks of time there. I was the correspondent or director of a news department that was leading elections coverage. And we had a couple of things happen. I was invited by a station in England, live morning for them, right? Drive time radio in England. They're like, wait, what? Schwarzenegger just won? So the first thing you're going to hear is MTK calling the Schwarzenegger victory for people in England.
But first, we want to talk to MTK news director for a KPFK radio station in Los Angeles. A dramatic election as Arnie makes it. Actor Arnold Schwarzenegger looks well on course, and he is on course to become the next governor of California, the richest state in the U.S. MTK, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. It's good evening to us. We're looking at about 45 minutes away from midnight here, and yes, with nearly 50% of the vote in now, the governor of the state of California, Gray Davis, appears to have been recalled by the state, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, the movie actor, seems to be headed towards the governor's mansion.
You see, over here there is a certain degree of incredulity that Arnie has actually done it in under 9 weeks, and it kind of begs the question, how?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why, is because the time was so short, and the practical reality is that there were people who weren't able to pursue a lot of questions that have come up about Mr. Schwarzenegger's past in depth in the time allotted, and he really played it right. He also had a very powerful machine behind him. That machine involved Republican players from far above here in California. It in fact involved the former Republican governor Pete Wilson and all of his sort of political machine, as well as that of the Bush and Reagan eras of the past. George Shultz became involved very early. So
there was that kind of question of, somebody must be working Arnie from behind, but maybe you've just answered that question.
Well, people are very unhappy in the state and have been with the job that the governor has done. And though it's true, this recall, there is something of a silver lining for progressives, our audience here at KPFK, for example. The governor did, in recent weeks, acknowledge that the far left has had big problems with how he's been handling things, and we've felt the Democrats have really rolled over to the Republicans and gone too far to the center, and so he was making some accommodation in recent weeks. But the practical reality here is there were just too many people in the state of California who had had enough of Gray Davis. So
it was more of wanting Davis to quit than perhaps really wanting Schwarzenegger in.
I think that's a lot of it, yes. And, the Knights Ritter poll on Sunday morning showed something interesting that didn't make the front pages, and that is that among people who call themselves occasional voters or first-time voters, Mr. Schwarzenegger, led all the candidates with nearly 70% of those people. And the reality is voter turnout made this happen for the Republicans, something that is not common in the United States. Usually the high voter turnout favors the Democrats. In this case, here was a political novice who, with tremendous voter turnout and disgust for the previous political machine, has managed to leverage himself into the governor's mansion.
It does kind of beg the question, Joe, of all the people in the whole of the U.S., we get a political novice. It does rather beg the question, was there nobody better to choose?
Well, there were 135 names on my ballot when I went to vote this morning, and I had plenty of choices, I suppose. I don't know. It's very difficult in America. Many have said that for the Americans, the stars are like our royalty. And very early, when he announced on August 6th from the Jay Leno program, The Tonight Show, very early in the game, he became a front runner simply on the strength of that celebrity. And there's some degree of an issue regarding the media here that must be addressed. Though we have media regulation for the network channels, we don't for the cable network television. And throughout the last 6 weeks, they have been playing Arnold Schwarzenegger films 24/7. It's ridiculous, I know, but the reality is none of the other candidates have this kind of exposure.
Well, I heard a very interesting statistic earlier this morning that there's been more national news coverage of Schwarzenegger's bid for this post than there was more national news coverage than there was in the last general election.
It's really unbelievable, and the establishment media has not really pressed on the hard questions, and there there are big questions about the press in the United States, I would say, reaching back to the election of 2000. And there are some issues here in the state that we have to deal with regarding the mechanics of voting. Just like there were in Florida in 2000, we had to deal with several of the punch card machines, which were outmoded machines, and we had lawsuits that were meant to deal with that, but frankly, they just never really managed to address the problem. But really here, the numbers are showing something else. That they're showing that people went out, and if all the machines worked properly, that they really chose to recall the governor, and the math had it that some 48 or 49% of those voting at this point wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger to be the governor of this state.
But clearly the honeymoon period will be over very quickly, and he can't progress to become president.
Well, he can't at this point, that's correct. But, an unusual thing has happened here in the United States. Orrin Hatch, the Republican senator from Utah, has recently introduced a kind of legislation which would put into motion the idea that a person born outside the country could, in fact, run for president, and the mechanics of it are expressly because the Republican Party believes in this guy. Arnold Schwarzenegger went to the GOP and he said, "Hey, let me run out there in California, I can win it for you." And they said, "What are you talking about? You've never really handled this kind of thing before." And sure enough, he's pulled it off. So we don't know. Obviously, that would take a constitutional amendment to happen for us to be able to elect people who are born outside the United States. But who knows? With his popularity, with his popularity, you can't. Yeah, it's true.
MTK, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning.
A real pleasure. Thank you.
News director from KPFK in Los Angeles. It's coming up to 13 minutes past, and we'd like to hear your thoughts on. Sorry, I've got to treat this story very seriously, but it's a serious story. This man is now going to be in charge of one of the the richest state in the US. I'd like to hear your thoughts this morning. You give us a call, 08453009948.
So it has to be said that that was thanks to Armando Gudino, who actually I think was the producer on that. But thank you to Armando for setting it up, as it were. But what was funny about that is that was around midnight, right? So in fact, the file is marked the 8th, but the election night was the 7th, and for the people in Los Angeles, my listeners, there were probably 500,000. But on election night, in the middle of an unprecedented moment, I may have had 1 million listeners, 2 million, who knows how many listeners there were. But this was how they heard that Arnold Schwarzenegger had been declared the governor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And God bless all of you. Thank you.
The governor-elect of the state of California, the 5th largest economy in the world, millionaire actor, sexual predator, husband to a Kennedy, former Mr. Olympia, son of a Nazi sympathizer, Arnold Schwarzenegger in victory.
So that's me live. That's me doing live radio twice, once in England and once in Los Angeles. The second one was first in time. But in the 2 hours between the time Mr. Schwarzenegger became governor, or was elected governor, and I had done the morning show, there was outrage. I'll play it for you again. But the point is, we had thought about this. I was responsible. This was Pacifica, which has had, all the way to the Supreme Court, rights cases regarding free speech. If there was ever a free speech case, this was it. I'll play it for you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And God bless all of you. Thank you.
The governor-elect of the state of California, the 5th largest economy in the world, millionaire actor, sexual predator, husband to a Kennedy, former Mr. Olympia, son of a Nazi sympathizer, Arnold Schwarzenegger in victory.
So the problem was sexual predator, because that was not something he was convicted of. But we had at our station interviewed women, and there were enough of them, and I had the records, and I made the argument, we're going to say this. He has just been named, he's just trampled as an actor all of the kind of media rules. And we as a station, an independent station, and certainly one that has the protection we had, should be able to do this. But I was very proud of that. It's a very punk MTK moment. But so I got suspended the next day, and then there were calls and letters, and I was put back on the air, I think, within 24 hours. Yeah, 20 years ago, this is how people in L.A. heard that...
The governor-elect of the state of California, the 5th largest economy in the world, millionaire actor, sexual predator, husband to a Kennedy, former Mr. Olympia, son of a Nazi sympathizer, Arnold Schwarzenegger in victory.